Hello, and welcome to The Cutting Edge, an Australasian Humour Studies Network podcast. My name is Knowles, and I host The Serrated Edge, which is the early career academics version of this podcast. And today I'm here with your usual host, Ben Nickl, and Professor Tony Moore.
Well, hello, Till. Thank you so much for doing that. We sounds like we rehearsed this before. We might not have. Who knows? Who's to say? Thanks so much for doing this, and thanks so much, Tony, for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
Brilliant, and really glad we could make this happen. So again, same format. We're going to go straight to the first question, and the timer starts.
So, Tony, you're currently one of the chief investigators on a project called Comedy Country. Can you please give our listeners a quick summary of your project? Tell us what motivated you and your team to embark on it, and tell us who's on the team and what kind of disciplinary backgrounds they bring.
It's about 4 questions, but to get right into it, the people involved in the project, that is the chief investigators and the partners, are all in some way engaged in culture and cultural studies, performance studies, cultural history, but also I've had some specialisation in comedy. And the project is about Australian comedy since the war, performance comedy, mediated across platforms, all genres, and specifically focused on its contribution, if you like, to a democratic process, to culture generally. And we're also looking at the extent to which it not only reflects cultural, social, political change, but also may shape it a little bit. So the extent to which it's a force of legitimization, if you like, or it exposes an issue to such an extent that it attracts attention. We're not doing it in a quantifiable way, though we may do a little bit of that, but we're looking at the correlations, and I can talk later about how we're doing that.
Right. And before we move on, I was just wondering if you could say just some tiny bits about Comedy Country. Why that name? Like, who came up with that?
Comedy Country emerged from a workshop, and I can't remember who actually came. We had lots of meetings, but I think it was Anne Pender. So we've got Professor Anne Pender on the project. Right. She's written about comedy and labour, comedy and as an industry, particularly comic performers that work live. Right. And wrote a biography of Barry Humphries, but has done amazing work with comic actors in particular. We've got Steve Vizard, who's a professor here at Monash, did his own academic PhD here, but he's kind of a king of comedy. Some would say, the godfather of comedy, or the wild child of comedy in Australia from the 1980s.
I like the wild child.
Yeah.
I'd like to be that.
And taking comedy, I guess, from fringe practice in Melbourne to mainstream television. And, he brings a wealth of knowledge, thought about comedy and contacts to the project. And we have Mark Gibson, who is a cultural and creative industries theorist, and also who I've collaborated with on a number of projects related to this. And we have Mark Carroll, who is a music and comedy, but also has a particular interest in comedy and pub rock and different kinds of musical and performance versions of live comedy. We also have an army of people that are employed by the project. Right. But the important thing is it's a linkage project, so we have all of these partner organisations and partner investigators, which we can talk about.
Right. And I mean, the good thing is because there'll be show notes, and people interested in this can, go to the show notes, they find your online presence, they find more information there. So that's plenty of, stuff where people can go. Let's maybe take it to another point where, as you were just pointing out, there's so many different people, there's so many bits and pieces involved in this project, which is great. But again, one of the main points this suggests is that comedy is such a big, vast thing, and it affects society in many different ways. So how would you say is it transforming? How is comedy and Australia, how is that kind of transformative thing at work in this country that is Australia.
Well, it was said by Peter Weir a long time ago that if you want to talk about an idea in Australia, it's good to do it through comedy. And there are examples through the 19th century and 20th century of, for example, when they're prosecuting the case for trade unions or for democratic representative government in the colonies, but particularly the labour movement, and particularly on the left, they used various forms of humour to prosecute their case and delegitimate their enemies. In our period post-war, we have numerous examples of comedy being part of the freeing up of society. Australia had incredible censorship, and it stems from a variety of reasons, partly to do with utilitarianism. If the majority like it, it's okay. If the minority don't, they can get stuffed. So a lot of people making pretty out there avant-garde comedy were arrested. They went to jail because they were literally making comedy like Lenny Bruce in America, defying censorship. The gay and lesbian Mardi Gras, as was known at the time, was all about comedy, a carnivalesque comedy, and enacting out in the open when it was illegal in the early days, and arrests attended it. Ranges of comedy, parody, burlesque, and again, that not only was fighting the man, if you like, it was also living free. And there's a whole lot of countercultures and social movements that utilise comedy to display the attributes of society they wanted, and it helped free it up. And this lurched into all sorts of interesting television. But the Tent Embassy itself, Gary Foley and people involved with that was, in some senses, a moment of comedy, of street theatre.
You've mentioned both Indigenous and First Nations activism and the theatrics of some of that, and also the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras. A significant focus of the project is about underrepresented voices. How do you integrate these elements into the research objectives? And what advice would you give to researchers working on similar humour-related projects, making inclusion central to their grant applications?
Well, luckily for us, the comedians made it front and centre. And the institutions that we partner with, and I should say that's Melbourne International Comedy Festival, Arts Centre Melbourne, the State Libraries of Victoria and South Australia, Adelaide Fringe, Adelaide Festival, and these organisations and Raw Film all favour and have all had policies and participation by Indigenous people and other diverse people. But the comedians themselves burst through and are present in the work they make. Right. And we've done a book called Fringe to Famous. Plug.
Again, in the show notes, you can find all
available in the foyer, which looks at how they occurred with Indigenous. Like the author of that particular chapter, Maura Edmund, spoke to Indigenous makers of film, and we spoke to comedians about how, and particularly if you think of WOGs out of work, pushing for it. So it's not up to us academics to wave the magic wand. It's there already. But we've built into the project foregrounding Indigenous comedy. We have engaging an Indigenous RA person who is working at RMIT that will be partially working with the Deadly Funny Initiative, which is an initiative of the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. And she's being engaged by the National Film and Sound Archive, another of our partners, to work on their Indigenous oral histories while helping with what we're doing. And we have a woman called Professor Mary Rose Casey, whose specialisation is Indigenous performance and including comedy. So it's recruitment, it's collaborations, it's the partnerships you work for, and it's also proceeding and building into the application your understandings and how that will be done. We're interested in the vectors by which these things occur. Right. We have to do the ethics applications, which is a topic of a whole other podcast.
Yes, I mean, let's not go there. There might be too many traumatized people listening to this and going, no, I'm switching off here. But if you can just stay with this a bit longer, because I thought one of the fascinating things. And, I had a chance to look at the application, and it was amazing to see how intricate this is set up. It's just fascinating. To people maybe doing this for the first time, or even those who, have experience. So can you tell us a bit more about how do you leverage this amazing, as you were saying, it's already there, but, you have to reach out, you have to talk to partners, you have to make connections, you have to kind of leverage that. So how did this happen, or how is it happening?
Well, I developed a model for another project called Conviction Politics, which is very much utilised and expanded in comedy country. And that is about impact and producing media that are utilising the research, of course, and new original research, but not just for books, not just for academic work, because our governments have wanted this, and I want it, and everyone in the project wants it. We want to change society. We want people to know about this. We want Australians to know their cultural history and contemporary things that are going on.
Right.
So we produce 100 documentaries, short documentaries.
So say that again, please.
We will produce 100 documentaries. Don't believe.
Awesome.
Don't take my word for it. Look up the Conviction Politics Transmedia Web Hub, and you will see that we've done this already on another project. We have already done, and we'll talk about this, a large number of broadcast standard documentary interviews for this project. We are making those, but we're creating a whole medium in which to do it, what I call a transmedia hub. We're going to have exhibitions. We're planning augmented reality-enabled walking tours. We will have podcasts. Yeah. And this is what the ARC and the Linkage project model, but particularly our partners want. They can utilise these resources. So that's one of the intricate parts, but we've sort of worked out how to do that. Then there is making sure that the goals and aims of your partners are respected and to the fore. They're not just being brought in to give us free archive or help us with the archive. We're there to help them. So it's beneficial to them. And it gives us an economy of scale. If all the good guys and gals get together, we can do good work. It's better than whinging that News Limited is all powerful or whatever. We can create our own using public resources in a sharing economy, our own way to do new original work and maybe change how we think about something like comedy, which we think is a heavy lifter culturally, heavy lifter in terms of cultural change, but it is not often examined as a whole of art form. It's sort of tagged on to how we think of culture, and it's not like treated seriously. It's always at the bottom of, and it's about hierarchies of art. So we say Australian people take it seriously in that they love it and they like it, and academics and really government policy should.
It's really, really interesting that because our final question was going to be about milestones and outputs, and it still will be. But in answering that question and in talking about what collaborators want and need, it really is. It's really about what is delivered, what is the practical thing that you're putting forward, and how can you help each other. It's collaborative and it's mutually supportive.
And I think I cannot also stress this enough. What I think is brilliant, the collaborative aspect.
Yeah,
and processes
of
nothing. Consultation. So structure. We have. I'm not a pictorial person myself in terms of flowcharts, but we have a governance structure that's in the application. But it was there before we finished it because you need that to do the application. So they need to be part of it. You need to have workshops. You need to visit one-on-one, but you need to raise the money because it's a linkage. So you need cash, you need in-kind. And Australian cultural institutions are the best in the world at, I think, thinking about the value of what they do. I think it's the legacy of the Keating era, and it's the worst, there are good and bad parts about economic rationalism, but we actually have learnt to value it. So that helps us working with them to put together a case. Well, they're all putting in this, and then the government kind of matches it through the ARC. But that helps its feasibility, and it's not just that we're doing some kind of Ponzi scheme. It's that they actually speak to the feasibility because we've got archive collection agencies, we've got performance bodies, we have festivals, we have a media company in raw film. everything that they're contributing makes it possible, takes it out of pie in the sky.
We've got about 30 seconds left. What is your favourite output? What are you most looking forward to making?
I do enjoy. I'm a documentary maker by trade as well as a historian and academic, and I love to make films. So I really like that. And I do now, I've got the exhibition bug. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Right.
Amazing. Comedy Country coming to a art gallery near you soon.
Yeah, you heard it here literally first, I guess. Again, people interested in this can look up information in the show notes. We're going to put all this.
We have a website, Monash, a Comedy Country. You'll find the website.
Right. Cool. And that's it.
Great.
That is time. Thanks so much for listening. And thanks so much, Till, for, again, co-hosting. And again, want to plug your podcast quickly?
Yes, it's called The Serrated Edge. You can find it the same places that you find this podcast.
Right. Cutting edge serrated.
Yes.
Too easy. All right. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.
Thanks. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.